This is Lynn McCree giving a shout out to my new friends, the producers and creators of Don't Go Out There. Don't go out there!
In a world where zombies, ghosts, serial killers, and vampires all exist, it's Nico, Brian, Mike, and Dustin, and they are all that stand between you and the films that could end the world. Welcome to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Don't Go Out There Horror Movie Podcast. Just want to thank all of our fans and listeners. Really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome. Before we get into tonight's film review, just want to give a quick shout out to our website, don'tgoouthere.com. Everything about our podcast is on the website. All of our episodes and interviews, if you want to check those out. We've done some incredible interviews in the past. Go check them out there in a specific tab by themselves so you don't have to scroll through hundreds of episodes on Apple or Spotify, etc. We also have our store if you want to grab a shirt, a mouse pad, a hat, all that good stuff. We'd love to see your pictures, rep your favorite podcast. And Shan's Etsy page is also attached if you want to grab a tumbler. All of our social media links are on there as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Like us, subscribe us, follow us, all that good stuff. And the last thing I'm going to shout out on our website is our Patreon. We call it Blood Donors. We have the traditional monthly reoccurring kind. If you want to support us, help us pay the bills, as we say. Or if there's a movie you want us to review, that option is available as well. Just check out our website, don'tgoouthere.com. Also, if you haven't noticed, we've recently joined the Believe Network. So there's some ads on our program now. But if you want ad-free content, go check us out on Blood Donors. The ad-free episodes will be available there. We appreciate your support. We hope you enjoy the episode.
All right, guys, into the film review. We continue on with Mike's September theme month, and it's Mike's pick. Mike, you want to announce your September pick?
Sure. I went with 2022 Smile. Really big film at the time. Yeah, buddy, you're creeping me out already. Had a lot of buzz. A little bit. God damn, everybody's doing it. Y'all are creeping me the fuck out. This is weird. Had a lot of buzz at the time. It kind of reminded me of the way that Longlegs kind of marketed itself here recently. It kind of feels like Smile did that same thing. The smile was everywhere. It was in the background of baseball games, football games. It was everywhere. And I thought it was a great marketing ad campaign. I picked the movie because it was time to do it. Some would say it was overdue. Maybe not everybody, but some would.
At the time, a couple weeks after it released, it was.
Well, yeah, buddy, that's what I'm saying. So here are my general thoughts. I was a lot like Nico when I first saw the film. Not to spoil your thoughts, brother. I was a little disappointed. I thought the film was pretty cookie cutter in a way, and it didn't deliver on the scares to me at the time. Upon a rewatch, or two now, actually, I liked it so much more this time around, and I mean a lot more. I think the use of the trauma as like an invisible monster really worked with me. This is going to make me sound like a huge hypocrite because this is the same shit that I criticized the Babadook for doing. So I completely understand. So in all fairness, I'm going to give the Babadook a rewatch soon. Guaranteed, and I will give my new thoughts on our Instagram. Okay? So there you go. The tension landed for me a lot more. I thought the acting was really impressive. And I just felt like I knew the characters and their background way more this time around. It really stuck with me. So I was excited to pick it, excited to talk about it because I probably have a little bit of higher rating than everybody else. I got a strange feeling about this. Don't worry, because I'm smiling through it all. Hey-o.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with liking similar movies that are executed differently, better than one another. There's nothing wrong with that. All right, yeah, like you mentioned, I was not a huge fan of this after my first watch. I was really excited for it. Like you said, the marketing was incredible. Like people just at the fucking baseball game, just smiling, creepy as hell. Like the marketing was phenomenal. But when I watched it in the theaters, I was like, this is very formulaic, very tropey. I feel like it just ripped off attributes of other horror movies and kind of just claimed it as their own. Outside, this is probably harsh, but outside of like that opening set of scenes I got after the first kill with Laura in the office, it just goes roller coaster downhill for me. Like, I think the opening is fantastic. Great short film, if you ask me. But after that, I'm just not a big fan. Yeah. But I am looking forward to Smile 2. somewhat tempered expectations, hopeful that they execute it better, but we'll see.
Yeah, I actually hadn't seen this movie before this review, and I'd honestly heard nothing but bad things. So I definitely wasn't in any hurry to sit down with it. Now, I didn't hate it. I didn't really even dislike it. But this movie's biggest issue to me is that it's about 30 minutes too long, and that causes scenes to not be tension filled like they thought. It causes them to be boring as shit, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I think this movie says a lot, like it tries to about, like you mentioned, mental health. But, and like we've said before about other movies, I think this has great bones. I think that it's a good concept, but the execution missed on that one thing. And unfortunately, that's a huge ass thing. Pause. A lot of The Ring and It Follows vibes. But sadly, for this one, when your movie becomes boring, you're done for, in my opinion. Everything else I think was decent, but it's hard to get past boring for me. But I didn't hate it.
Well, geez, fellas, leave something for me to say. Literally, my opening thoughts has all been said. So the ad campaign was phenomenal. The people showing up at sporting events, standing behind home plate, it just creepy as fuck. I saw, so kind of the opposite of Brian there. I saw a lot of people love this movie when it came out, and I was like, okay. And I'll get into it at the end of the show like I normally do, but the critic reviews, it's got high marks, and so I was like, okay, let's go see it. And then I was just so disappointed. I don't think I liked it any more or less on this second time watching, but to Nico, you said the first act you liked. I'll take it a step further. The first 2/3 of the movie I think are fine to me. But the ending is just so disappointing, and it's way too fucking long. An hour 55, an hour 56 minutes for this. There's so much they could have cut. So it's one of those movies, like, I didn't absolutely hate it, but I don't like it at all.
Just so we're clear, the runtime affects my score. Like, I enjoyed it a lot more this time around, but we could trim 20 minutes off of this movie, and we're talking a really high score from me. Like, it would have landed perfectly if we didn't bloat a couple of these. We're supposed to be tension-filled scenes, for lack of a better term. Like, they just kind of, all right, let's go, get to the scare or whatever you're trying to do. So, yeah, no, I completely agree on the runtime.
And Dustin, you mentioned that it was the opposite of me with the critics, saying that you had heard that it was really good. I actually only listened to the three critics that I care about, which are you three guys. And you three guys,
I didn't like it.
All said that it stank, so I was not going to go watch it right off the bat.
Well, and it's also, I left this out there, but you brought up It Follows in The Ring. I have that, like, nods to those in my notes. But
very similar, right?
To me, both of those movies do a similar premise better. So
to me, it really is.
And Truth or Dare.
Yeah, I was going to say the truth. It's those movies and Babadook kind of smooched in a sock together. So I completely. Clearly the mental health and the trauma, the past trauma where the Babadook comes in, or the grief, or whatever you want to call it. It's all in there for sure. I just like saying trauma because I know that Jamie Lee Curtis says it, and that annoys Nico, so that makes it fun.
We're going to go watch Halloween Resurrection after we get out done with this.
Trauma.
I do want to give a couple praises before we get started. I do think Sosie Bacon and Kyle Gallner give good performances. Like, I do think they do a good job. And another thing I think the film does very good is the camera work. I think there is excellent camera work. Some great shots, and that's about all my positives. So,
yeah. So, am I the only one that didn't realize until like a couple days ago that Sosie Bacon is Kevin Bacon's daughter?
Me, got it in my notes, didn't notice it either, or didn't realize
didn't know that either.
Especially because if you look at her, she looks like Jim Carrey. Kevin, you might have some questions to ask Jim Carrey, my guy.
Oh, Jesus, man.
I'm just saying.
Fuck.
All right, let's get into the scene by scene. The film starts with a sickly-looking woman on screen lying in bed in a dirty-ass room. We see family pictures and a little girl at the door staring at her mother in shock. Rose wakes up at her desk from a phone call, and she's in a room now with a patient named Carl. He keeps repeating chants over and over until she sits beside him. He thinks he's dying. She thinks it's a manic episode. She puts Carl into observation, and she's told Dr. Desai is looking for her. We see a patient brought to the hospital screaming as Rose goes to Dr. Desai's office. They talk about work stuff until he asks how long she's been at work today. She leaves and her phone rings, and she storms back in her office answering, unable to leave work. A nurse tells her about a patient who saw her professor bludgeon himself with a hammer. Rose meets with Laura, who is in the corner of the room acting very skittish and looks terrified. Rose asks her to sit and begins recording. She begins asking Laura questions. She says she isn't crazy. She's a PhD student. Laura tells her she sees something no one else can see, and she begins crying while talking. It's like it wears people's faces like masks. It's smiling at me. I get this awful feeling something terrible will happen to me. More conversation between them until Laura freaks out, falling backwards, yelling, "It's here." Rose sees nothing as Laura spazzes out. Rose calls for help, but doesn't see Laura on the floor anymore. She's standing up, smiling with glass in her hand. She cuts her face from her cheek down to her throat to the other side. Rose is horrified, sliding down to the floor, and Laura falls over, still smiling at Rose, which I thought was very creepy. Opening credits as we zoom into Rose's eye and title card. Dr. Desai is meeting with the police, and they now question Rose about Laura and her mental state. She tells them about the evil presence haunting her, not taking it seriously. Before she died, she was smiling, Rose says, as we see the blood smile on the sheet covering her. All right, Brian, that's the opening set of scenes. What did you think?
Well, so just by the beginning there, it sounds like we pretty much all think that this movie is too long and therefore boring in a lot of the parts. But seeing that it's directed and written by Parker Finn, I wonder if that's the age-old thing that I like to call the David Goyer Blade 3 effect. Has anything to do with that? Because when you're doing both, you have nobody to check you on stuff like that and no voice to say, should probably really cut that. So just kind of throwing that out there. But with that said, I do understand why Finn would want to do it. I mean, it's his baby, with this being kind of like Terrifier, where he had done that short version called Laura Hasn't Slept. So, of course, he'd want to do that. Speaking of that, if that's the one that came first, and Laura is the name of the girl in the open here, and it's the same actress playing Laura that did in that short, Caitlin Stasey, is this not really the original? That is. So this is a sequel? I don't know. But another hot take here, Caitlin Stasey, I think, could almost be up there, and I said almost, with Casey Becker as one of the best kills to start off a movie. I said that. We definitely need a seizure warning with this title card, just throwing that out there as well. And also, this is the first thing I've seen Sosie Bacon in at all. And I know she's been in a bunch of stuff, which you'd expect being Kevin Bacon's daughter, like Dustin mentioned, and Kara Sedgwick's daughter, which, by the way, she is a splitting image to me, not of Jim Carrey, but of Kara Sedgwick. I don't think I do agree that she doesn't look like Kevin at all. I mean, she's won a Golden Globe, but it's just not my cup of tea, the stuff she's been in, I guess, so I haven't seen anything with her in it but this. Some great camera work, like Nico mentioned, from Finn all throughout. So I'm just going to try to point out some of the shots, but it's mostly that same kind of move that he does where he zooms out or in on something and then spins the camera. Very well done all throughout. Very good open. I have to overlook the fact that a hospital would never allow Rose to interview a clearly psychotic patient alone in a closed room without being restrained or anything. But it still was a very cool visual. Great effects on stuff like that all throughout as well. Jeremy Sellenfriend and his whole makeup department. Sellenfriend is an old hat, though. MIB3, Black Panther, Shazam, all of Nico's favorite movies, basically. And seeing the blood smile effect at the end of this set of scenes, I thought was a great touch as well. Just great open.
Yeah, I think the opening shot here, with the long tracking shot is really good. Especially, I like to see, because especially when we find out later what this actually is and it ties in and what it involves. My man was sitting in the chair repeating himself like I do when I'm watching the Eagles play and Jalen Hurts is out there stinking it up. I just say the same shit over and over again. So I can relate to this man in this moment. I really love the music in this one, straight from the jump. I think the sound and score and the other music is really good. It adds a lot to its presence, to its creepiness. Shout out to Kal Penn, Lil Harold and Kumar, amongst many other great films and television shows as well. I will say this opening scene gives me chills, man. This, how quiet the room is and with how Laura is acting, it makes me very uneasy. Just really well done. Being a PhD candidate does not disqualify you from being quote unquote crazy. Just want to point that out. There's been quite a few really smart, not so, well-minded individuals, for lack of a better term. I won't, she keeps having or wanting Laura to look at her. Oh no, that would have been the last thing I wanted her to do was look at me. Nope, because you're in for a long movie. So are we. Anyway, I do think this idea of an invisible monster, for lack of a better term, is pretty interesting because we never really see what the monster looks like until the end, minus a few sketches. And I think that's fair. It's obviously an amalgamation and for trauma or whatever you want to use it for, grief, anything. But I do think that word gets a little overused. It does work here. But the smile bloodshot at the end, really well done. Super creepy, super effective. I think this is a really effective opening set of scenes.
Pretty creepy open. The lighting, the score, the set props and design, the little girl, all creepy as fuck. And I like the cut to the office immediately. That's an effective transition. Psych words are creepy as fuck, so good setting for the movie there. And we see former White House Office of Public Engagement Liaison for Outreach to Asian Pacific Americans and Art Communities, the great Kal Penn. Nico and I just did an instant reaction for Afraid that featured John Cho, so it's cool we get Penn here. Shout out to Harold and Kumar, Elite Comedies. The tone for the movie is solid. It feels solemn and heavy, and the score and lighting has a lot to do with it. The interaction with Laura is great. She does a great job portraying her fear and torment, and I like how she explains the plot there. And holy shit, when she wigs out and then appears just standing behind Dr. Cotter smiling and cuts herself, and she maintains that smile after she's dead, whew, hot start. Then after the opening credits, we get another familiar face, Kyle Gallner. Definitely recommend watching Strange Darling. Great movie. I'm definitely invested in this movie so far.
Hell yeah. I'm pulling a mic when Strange Darling comes out. I'm picking that shit as soon as I can.
So good.
But anywho, overhead shot of Rose driving home and she looks completely out of it once going inside. She sees blood on her shirt and decompresses in the shower. She takes some pills with wine as she sees Laura in the corner of the room. Her fiancé Trevor scares her, saying her name, and she drops a glass on the floor. They kiss and he knows something is wrong. She tells him about a patient dying and consoles her. Rose says they can't skip dinner with Holly and Greg, but sits there disconnected from it all once they get there. She says she can't make it to Jackson's 7th birthday party because of work. They tell her she works too much and shouldn't work Saturdays. Rose doesn't want to sell their mom's house and snaps on her as food is brought to them. Rose and Trevor are back home, and he checks on her while she feeds the cat. Rose is back at work catching up as Joel, the detective, is back. He's there to check on her and ask how she's been. She says she doesn't need him checking on her, and he apologizes. A nurse tells him she's engaged, but says she's single. Shoot your shot, ladies. I like that. Rose reads the report on Laura until Holly calls her apologizing for last night. Rose sees someone staring up at her through the window, spacing out during the call. She passes Carl's room, noticing him smiling at her like Laura did. She can't snap him out of it, and he starts saying, "You're going to die," over and over. She yells for help for him and stares in shock. She's with Dr. Desai, who questions her about patient's behavior. He tells her she's taking a week off and needs to get her mental health in check and get focused and rested. She catches her breath in the car, then stops and buys a model train for Jackson's birthday party. She wraps the present as Trevor texts her about being late at work. She gets more wine and is scared again this time by the alarm suddenly going off. She gets her scissors as a weapon and turns the alarm off after checking the front door. The phone rings and Rose verifies her password to the alarm company, who is now a menacing voice asking if she's sure she hasn't let someone inside. "Look behind you," she says. Rose goes to turn around and the phone rings again, and she's not holding the phone anymore. She answers, and it's the alarm company again. All right, Brian, that's the next set of scenes. What'd you think?
So right off the bat, this overhead shot from Finn at the start of this when Rose was driving home, I can't really express how amazing of a shot that this was to me. It was like this normal overhead shot, but then it flips upside down. And I'm sure that's symbolizing like how her world is about to flip upside down. It was a very impressive shot nonetheless. I've not seen that shot in film much, if at all. And okay, if the beginning was almost pure horror, a Ring-esque almost, this is where the movie starts to really slow down. And I mean, yeah, it does show the entity, but I think this is where, to me, it really starts to tell you that, yeah, I mean, this is a curse movie, of course, but this is really a pretty deep statement on mental health, the effect of trauma, grief, guilt, the whole shebang. I mean, she goes back to work immediately, which, again, you've got to look past that, because no way the hospital, I mean, even if it is run by Kumar after his last trip to White Castle, but no way that they let her go back to work until she's finally, having a nervous breakdown to let her go home. I mean, come on. But she goes back to work, tries to put on a smile for everyone, pretty much like most people do that suffer from things like depression and all of these things. And whenever we talk about that, I always think of that Robin Williams quote that where he says, the saddest people always try their hardest to make people happy because they know how it feels. And I'm paraphrasing that, but that's pretty much it. And I definitely think that there's a lot that Finn is trying to say here with all of that. And I mean, starting at dinner with her sister. I mean, look at her brother-in-law, Greg. He's a fucking douche, by the way. Played by Nick Arapaglo, Kurt in season 8 of The Walking Dead, another douchebag he's played. But also, formerly on our show with 2020's Freaky, don'tgooutthere.com, he was the deputy that I think I criticized for being an idiot. So, sorry, Kurt. I'm just not a fan. Actually, I'm not sorry. Fuck you. And I texted in the group as soon as Jesse Usher came on screen. I was like, A-Train. And look, if you're listening to this show and you haven't seen The Boys, go watch it. I mean, it's fucked up. If you like this show, you will fucking love The Boys. That sense of humor is just it.
Never heard of it, brother. Anyway, Nature. I'm just kidding. Of course, I've heard of it, but no, I won't watch it. I appreciate the recommendation, though. Speaking of recommendations, a nature driving shot. I know that excited you, Brian. I know you got all perked up about that one, brother. So shout out to you. Look, I definitely, if this had happened to me at work, I definitely wouldn't hold it in with my partner. If he asked, I would pretty much come unclean right away. I said I know that's probably going to get some jokes here somewhere. Can't wait. I will say, Trevor really does seem, at least early, like a loving and supporting partner. And I would, so yeah, man. And then they go to dinner, and this seems so uncomfortable. I would have a really hard time caring about anything my sister is saying after the events that took place, especially my nephew's 7-year-old birthday party. That's just how I would view it. I appreciate this nurse trying to jump Kyle Gallner's bones right out the bat. Said, she's engaged. I'm single. I appreciate the shout out from her there. That's pretty good. Look, if I were Kumar, I'd tell her to go home too. Like, you got to run this operation as a tight ship. You can't have anybody out here freaking other patients out. And by the way, take it from someone who knows, wine is not going to help you. It may feel better for a minute, but it's not going to help you in the long term. Just throwing that out there. I don't love the jump scare with the phone ringing. I feel like it made it a little bit less tense. It felt like more stock horror movie stuff to me. So I thought it kind of ended on a whimper, but that's all I had.
I'm not sure how Rose had blood on the part of her shirt that was tucked into her pants. That was weird. I really expected someone to be standing behind the fridge door when she shut it. Kudos to the movie for not doing that. And when she sees Laura standing in the shadows, that's much more effective and creepy. They do a great job portraying how traumatized and detached Rose was at dinner. She was fucked up. I got a good chuckle, too, when the nurse said, she's engaged, right? I'm single. Like, that was great delivery. I like the subtle way the person standing outside when she's on the phone is shown, and then Carl smiling on his bed as she walks by. Really good stuff there. Normally, I hate jump scares like this, but the house alarm going off was effective. It got me. And seeing how traumatized she's been, it's tense as fuck. And it's creepy as fuck when the security company representative asks if she's sure she's alone. And even more creepy when we see that she wasn't even on the phone. This is another decent set of scenes I'm still in at this point.
Police check the house and it's all clear. They tell her not to worry about it and call back if anything happens. Trevor gets to the house asking what happened. He asks why she set the alarm as she feeds the cat. She tells him her head is in a foggy, creepy place. She asks for his help finding Mustache. She can't find the cat anywhere. Rose relives finding her mother dead in bed and her grasping for air as she wakes up from a nightmare. She's at the table watching her session with Laura. She replays a segment of whispering repeatedly and gets jump scared by a ghost beside her saying her name. She grabs a knife and Trevor runs in checking on her but is terrified himself as she holds the knife out. Rose meets with Dr. Northcott telling her about the experience with Laura. Rose asks for a Risperdal prescription, saying she's hearing and seeing things. Dr. Northcott doesn't think she needs medicine. She has old trauma that's not healed. She advises to do things that take her mind off of it, and they should resume normal sessions. Doctor says, let's wait until next week before any medications. Rose is at Holly's now for Jackson's party. They sing happy birthday and Rose is disconnected again. Jackson opens Rose's present and he's terrified. We see Mustache, the dead cat in the box. The whole mood is killed as Rose cries and the others stare in shock. Rose sees someone smiling at her and she asks if anyone sees her. Rose falls backwards through a glass table, crying out in pain. All right, Brian, this is the next set of scenes. What'd you think?
Okay, so this may just be a me thing, but at the start of this, when Rose is opening up that cat food for Mustache, I could smell that scene. Canned cat food makes me want to fucking puke. Another great shot from Finn going back into her mom's room with her on the bed during Rose's nightmare, spinning once again, but this time zooming in. And I'll tell you what, I don't know if any of that's CG, but Dora Kiss keeping her eyes that still was very impressive. That and the makeup on Bacon, or lack thereof, the progression of showing her, and I don't know if I want to call it a slip into madness, because again, I think that this is more about mental illness or past trauma that's being called out into the forefront because of this curse or demon thing or whatever it is. But the way that's shown progressively get worse on her face through makeup and other methods, I thought that was very well done. I mean, you almost saw her look like she'd aged 20 years over the length of the movie, which I'm going to be honest, I felt like I aged 20 years as long as this fucking movie was. A jump scare that got me probably the most of any of this movie was in this set of scenes when Rose was listening to that recording of the open of the movie, and we kept getting closer and leaning in to see it as if an audience member could hear what she was trying to, and then bam, fuck, that one got me. Like, Finn, you son of a bitch, that was a good one. We have Robert Weigert here playing the therapist. He was in seasons 2, 6, and 10. Wow. We have Robin Weigert here playing the therapist, was in seasons 2, 6, and 10 of American Horror Story. And lastly, the birthday party was another great scene. Like, I literally couldn't tell if that was in her head or if it really happened for a while. And it never really does tell you if she's the one that killed Mustache and packed him in there, or if the entity thing did it. Sosie Bacon, I think, is just killing it at this point. Like, it seems like she really put a ton into this performance, and you can tell it really shows on screen, in my opinion.
First of all, you named your pet Mustache? Brother, what are we doing here? I mean, I know cats have funky names, but Mustache? Okay, sure. Again, where is the jump scare coming from when she's listening to this audio? Like, obviously it's an internal one. Maybe it's from the entity, but I don't know. I just found it like, I just don't know if this movie needed these few jump scares that it does have. There's some effective ones for sure. I feel like, they're kind of stacked, but it's not like a huge it's a nitpick to me. The scene with her therapist is interesting because you can finally start to see her really cracking, what you mentioned, Brian. Like she's aging in real time at a rapid rate. And you can just see her really starting to kind of slide down. She's pleading for her meds. And trying to ignore the actual root of what a lot of her issues and her problems in her life come from. I will tell you, therapists hate when you ask them for advice out at a party or out at a social event like they're on a fucking clock. They are a therapist, not your therapist. If you want their advice, pay them for their fucking time. Shout out to a friend of the show and my cousin-in-law, Taylor. I appreciate that. This is a fucking heartbreaking scene, though. All these things combined, the general anxiety she was already feeling about being out of work. She doesn't really want to be at this party in the first place. And then you have this invisible entity thing. It's a double-edged sword because no one will believe her the same way no one would believe Laura, including her. Last thing, was not expecting a New Jack ECW glass table bump in this film, brother. Good fall, tucked her neck, got her head up. Didn't land on her head. Should be fine. Real glass, fake glass. Cry me a river.
I was about to ask, do you think that was real glass, brother?
Hey, that's working glass, brother.
Yeah.
Not shoot glass.
All right. So I like to look back to the scene we saw in the open in her dreams and the way the camera rotates. That was well done. It looked great. Insane jump scare when she's listening to the audio of Laura. That got me again, like right beside her face. The scene at the birthday party where the sound goes silent and the score intensifies is great. Solid tease that shit's about to go down. And little buddy pulling the dead cat out of the box is fucked. And so was seeing Laura sitting there smiling. and it's followed up with a great jump scare and a hell of a scene with her falling through the table. I may or may not have fallen through a few coffee tables in my day. Granted, my blood alcohol content level was much higher than hers, but I'm still in at this point.
I thought you were doing some of that wrestling stuff that we see on Instagram for like $25 via Cash App.
Hell no. No, I fell through a girl's coffee table a few months ago. I still owe her one.
Shoot glass or working glass, brother?
Oh, it was solid wood. About broke my fucking ribs anyway.
Jesus. Rose is at the doctor's office and Dr. Desai checks on her. We see Holly and Trevor talking in the hall as Dr. Desai says she should meet with someone professionally. The mood is awkward as hell between Rose and Trevor in the car as she tells him she's not crazy. Something is happening to me and it's going to be hard for you to believe. She thinks the same entity that killed her patient is now attached itself to her. She says it's not a ghost, it's something else. Trevor exits the car saying he can't do this right now. She snaps saying she's not crazy and he says mental illness is genetic. Whew, this is a hell of an argument. The two continue arguing and he asks if she killed Mustache. She denies it, blaming the entity, and he walks away. Rose is back on her laptop doing more research on the previous victims. She hears a voice whisper, "Come here," from the darkness. Instead of investigating, she turns the lights off and lies down. "Please help me," she hears. "Mommy made a mistake." She rolls over and we see a figure in the doorframe. Jump Rose as Rose is almost hit by a car walking up to Miss Munoz's door. She tells Rose about her husband's experience with the entity. We see Mr. Munoz's battered face as she breaks down crying. Rose asks about the things Gabriel was seeing. Miss Munoz takes Rose to his office and we see the drawings he did. Rose finds out about Gabriel seeing a woman die by suicide at a conference. Rose keeps asking questions and Miss Munoz calls her a nutcase and wants her out the house. Rose walks away acting fidgety. She knocks on a door and we see it's Joel's apartment. She enters uninvited and asks for a favor. He gets his laptop and looks up Gabriel Munoz. Rose keeps asking questions about the reports and the victims. She humbly tells him she needs his help. They watch a video file of a man killing himself with hedge trimmers to their shock. Rose cries saying she must leave, but she asks to use his printer before she goes. All right, Brian, so next set of scenes, what do you think?
I'm going to be honest. This is where the movie really starts to drag for me. Now, I do like the investigation aspect of the whole thing. I mean, that's where it really starts to feel like The Ring in that regard. But, I mean, there's just a ton that, I mean, once again, I feel like that they could have cut out, like the whole thing here with Gabrielle Munoz's mom. Like, I didn't need all that. I mean, he could draw good, but are we seeing the same thing? No. The entity is showing itself in a different ways, so what did we do here? It was literally a 10-minute scene. Get rid of that shit. Now, it does seem like a good time to talk about the soundtrack. Very good soundtrack in this one, in my opinion. Nothing feels off. Very creepy. Let me try not to butcher this name here. Cristobal Tapia de Vir. And if you listen to our series show, I'm honestly not real sure you would have heard his name on there either, but you should have, because he was the composer on our episode Black Museum, which we covered. Go check that out. Don't go out there to .com. And, you know, it wasn't until this scene when Rose shows up at Joel's house that I pointed. I was like, hey, that's Vince from Scream 5. Or as my wife pointed out, and sorry for this, Dustin, but watching Scream 5, she said, he looks like a discount Morgan Wallen. Well, maybe Morgan Wallen's a discount Kyle Gallner. So,
or he's just a dickhead.
I mean, or he's a dickhead. Spoiler alert, I think Gallner is coming back for the sequel here. So, anyway.
Sorry, I was checking in from a flight. I didn't want to miss it. I don't like to be late.
Money Mike, Mileage Mike.
Mileage Mike, at it again.
Sorry, I'm going to see my mom. Everybody paid a lot of money, let me tell you. Anyway, the first time I watched this movie, I really considered Trevor kind of a total asshole. And I still stand on that to an extent. But you really do have to consider that it would be a lot to full on believe someone in this situation. There's definitely a better way to handle it, but I think, I will say at least he's trying. I think the scene with the sketches, and the Munoz lady are fine. It does give us a little peek at what the invisible monster looks like, and I found that pretty interesting. I also just don't feel going to these victims' families' house is super respectful. Like, I think it's pretty disrespectful. Like, don't bring that shit back around to us, man. Especially, like, her knowing that she's got this entity thing, going to visit people that have been through the same thing. I'm just not a fan. Then she shows up at my man Kyle Gallner's house wanting a favor. For what? What'd she do for it? Nothing. Just wants a favor after giving him the cold shoulder earlier? Nah, you gotta get out of here. Just kidding. I can show a little empathy. She clearly looked like she was upset. I like this security cam footage kill. I thought it was really cool and creative how they shot it. And also, side note, this may be the clearest security parking lot camera I've ever seen in my whole life. That shit was crazy. We got modern day stuff where it's black, white, and fuzzy like it was shot in 1946. But this one, crystal clear. That's all I had. I thought it was an okay set of scenes.
I'm not really a fan of the whole significant other not believing the main character trope. We've seen it a million times, so didn't really like that. Her hearing the voice calling for her and then cutting to her almost getting plowed by a car is a nice touch, keeping us on our toes there. Gabriel's face under the sheet is wild. Great job by the props and makeup crew for that mangled mess. I like Rose going to Joel's and then discovering that these victims all saw other suicides before they did. Like, the plot is thickening here. The look on Buddy's face before he killed himself at the gas station was a great touch. But the blood after his death looked awful. Maybe it was because of the lighting at the gas station. I don't know, but it just looked really too fluorescent red. It's a slower set of scenes, I will admit, but a lot of story progressing.
Overhead shot of Rose driving, making it back home. Trevor and Dr. Northcott are waiting on her. Rose is pissed she's there and with him. Rose, in my opinion, gaslights Trevor and storms out the house. She's at Holly's cussing Greg out, asking to speak with her. I have been cursed from my patient, she tells Holly. Rose shows Holly the evidence from Joel's, but Holly says she's having a breakdown. She says, this is what happened to Mom. You sound just like her. Rose now snaps, asking, how would you know? You were never around. Holly goes inside saying she's traumatized Jackson, done with the conversation. Rose gets in her car and sits down, decompressing. We see Holly walk out the house into her car window. She's jump scared as Holly's head looks down creepily into the window, snapping towards it. Jackson watches Rose freak out in the car. But Rose rebounds by getting herself a hamburger that looks like it goes crazy. She gets a call from Joel finding 20 cases that all link to each other, 19 of them being suicide. Rose tells Joel she has to speak to the man who broke the pattern. The two are headed to Altoona, and Joel is processing everything going on with Rose. Rose doesn't think it's suicide. It's as if the person gets taken over. Joel reassures her whatever happened to the other people won't happen to her. They're at the prison to meet Tally. Rose meets with Tally to ask some questions. She says she doesn't care about what he was accused of, but what he experienced leading up to it. She asks him what is it and why is he alive. Tally asks the cop to leave, and he says he'll tell Rose what he knows. He tells Rose about a case in Brazil. You have to kill someone and spread it to someone else. You have to use trauma to spread it. Rose snaps, saying, I can't kill someone. He realizes that she's the one who has it, and he begins panicking to get away from him. They seize him, and she and Joel leave. Joel stops her at the gate, and she says he's out of his mind. All right, Brian, that's the next set of scenes. What do you think?
Another just great fucking shot to open the set of scenes with Rose driving home from Joel's. And I thought it was very well acted scene between Bacon and Jillian Zinser playing Holly when they're on that porch. Those two have great chemistry together, played those parts fantastically all throughout. But this scene on Holly's porch with Rose pouring out her soul to her and the discussion basically breaking down very organically, by the way, that whole thing I thought was very well written and acted, of course. But then we follow it up with that shot inside the car where we see Holly storming back out, blurred in the background, crossing her arms, the whole thing. And we think that she's coming back out to say something. And then bam, we get old Crooked Neck. Great fucking scene there. I love it. Absolutely great. That shot with her nephew in there, watching her freak out in the car, kind of lingered a little bit to me, didn't it? Kind of let us think like maybe something's more to come of that. Maybe, I don't know. It definitely didn't in this movie, so I don't know. Maybe we'll see in the second one. Another beautifully shot transition from the close-up of that neon sign on the diner in this set of scenes to showing Rose crying in a car, to showing it eating a sandwich. But again, I mean, that was only like a quick little transition. Again, beautiful, but was it needed? You know, I'm just saying, in a 2-hour movie that drags, stuff like that stands out to me as, you know, maybe you can cut that. Even the scene with Tally, that was absolutely important to us finding out that, okay, the curse only needs trauma to be passed on, not suicide. But that was something that by this point in the movie, I'm like, man, this should have come earlier. You know, shout out to Rob Morgan, though, that played Tally. At the end of the set of scenes, when he finds out that she has it, what a great piece of acting there. He was freaking the fuck out and was actually Chief Powell, by the way, in Stranger Things Season 4. I know Dustin's definitely seen that. Go ahead.
Oh, hell yeah. Love it.
You should, brother. Anyway, More nature driving shots, Brian. I know you're excited, buddy. Look at the nature in this movie. Fucking fall time. Let's get after it. Like Nico said, man, in the scene by scene, I feel bad for Trevor. I feel like he is getting gaslit a little bit. I feel like he's at least trying to do what he thinks is best. Question mark. He just doesn't quite know how to handle it. He doesn't know how to handle what's going on around him. He doesn't know how to handle the emotion. So I have a little bit of empathy for him. I mean, obviously, he's not a great character. He's flawed. But again, I think people in the reactions I saw were a little harsh on him. The majority of the movie, I don't like Holly, her sister. But in this scene, I think she redeemed herself a little bit. You totally redeemed yourself. Anyway, it seems like she just found a different way to handle her trauma, her grief, how it affected her. And I have to respect that. Not everyone's the same. Not everyone's going to handle it the same. She decided to kind of sink into this boring, normal, cookie-cutter suburban life, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's how you choose to kind of move on from what happened to you in the past. I think the old Crooked Head scene is really good. I remember how many people that got in the trailer and the marketing. So I was waiting the first time I saw it to see how they were going to actually execute it. I thought it was well done. It's even more effective when they cut to her kid watching his aunt freak out in the car by herself. Like, he's already traumatized clearly, and then you have to see that. You know what to think. I think the fact that these two are riding around in the car together, and then that they're exes, makes it a little bit, awkward. I don't know if I even would have introduced that. I thought you could have found a different way to connect these characters, in my opinion. Or at least they were an old flame. I don't, one or the other. Last thing. If I'm this man in prison, and you bring this bullshit back around me, I would never forgive your ass. You would have to kill me to keep me from killing her. That's the truth. Do not bring that bullshit back around. That's all I'm saying. I get what she's trying to do, but some of this stuff just feels super disrespectful to me. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, more development scenes here early with the therapist, and then Rose at her sister's. Nothing bad, just nothing noteworthy either, until the best jump scare of the movie when Holly's head rotates at the car window. Holy shit, that was insane. When Rose is in the car with Joel, I know she's running through every movie she could think of trying to figure out how to beat this thing. Do I have to show someone a videotape? Do I have to fuck someone like in It Follows? Nope, she's got to kill someone. Not great. But at this point in the movie is when I'm really like, all right, man, let's wrap this up.
Y'all bear with me. This is my longest set of scene by scene. Rose stares off blankly out the window as she makes it back to her home. Her phone rings and it's Dr. Northcott. Rose is looking at all the crime scene photos as Trevor texts her saying they need to talk until Rose bites her finger too hard, causing it to bleed badly. Rose slowly grabs a knife, but the doorbell rings. It's Dr. Northcott. Rose puts all the evidence up and answers the door. She tells Rose she has the duty to report her if she's a danger to herself. She lets her inside and the two chat about what she and Trevor talked about. She asks how Rose is doing and the phone rings. The call is from Dr. Northcott. Rose freaks out seeing the doctor in the house smiling at her. Almost time, Rose. Rose backs away and runs off from Dr. Evil until she backs into a wall. It's funny, we were talking about Austin Powers before this. She backs into a wall and has her mouth grabbed. Rose is in her car and grabs a knife from home. She tucks it in her sleeve and walks into the hospital. She goes into Carl's room and he turns around. He backs to the wall screaming as Dr. Desai asks why she's here. He sees the knife and she stabs Carl in the chest repeatedly. He doesn't die and just mocks her. Dr. Desai begins ripping his face off until she wakes up from the nightmare. Dr. Desai knocks on her window asking why she's here. She doesn't know and he asks to talk, but she says she needs to be alone. She drives away and he panics seeing the knife in her passenger seat. She drives away frantically after seeing Carl's bloody face. Joel calls her and she says she can avoid it by being alone. She says she's going to face it and hangs up on Joel. She's back at her childhood home and tries turning the lights on to no success. She wanders the house, eventually heading to her mother's room where she saw her in bed dying. We flash back to her younger self as Mom asks for her help, saying she made a mistake. Get the phone, call for help, but the moment gets too big and Rose runs away. Rose enters the room but quickly exits. She closes the shades, locks the doors, and lights a kerosene lamp. She sits down looking around until we hear a door open. She walks down the hall and sees her mom's bedroom door open. She hears her sobbing and opens the door, fully seeing her sitting on the edge of the bed. She walks to her and her mom says, "It's okay, come here." "I am so sorry. I haven't been a good mom." Rose stops her and Mom asks, "Why did you let me die? You didn't call." Rose says she was afraid of her. "You are a monster. I have to let go of the guilt." Mom smiles at Rose and follows her. Rose shuts the door, but Mom's hand grabs it. And that's the next set of scenes. What'd you think, Brian?
I do really love this scene with the therapist showing up in the movie, lulling us into that false sense of security until she gets that call from the therapist, the real one, and realizes that's the entity. Another great fake out there. And that shot where it's got like where the entity has her backed up against the wall and Rose's face and all the drool and shit. I thought that was beautiful. Now, the next part of this where we get another fake out at the hospital, I know what Finn was trying to do. Well, I think so anyway, where he's trying to give us the same experience as the character as far as like not knowing what's real and what's fake. But this whole part, like great effects on Kumar ripping his face off, but it felt like too much. Like it felt unneeded. You just gave us the fake out with the therapist. This whole scene just felt off to me. And something else interesting though, going back to the mental illness aspect, never really brought up Carl. Carl isn't cursed by this demonic entity. He's just mentally ill, but yet he's having the same symptoms that Rose and the other victims are having, seeing things, the whole ordeal. So yeah, I think that's a character Finn put in there to show that aspect and kind of show like, hey, that's what I'm fucking doing here. It's what I'm trying to tell you about in this movie. Now, I know it bleeds into the next group of scenes, but we're getting really close to where I feel like the movie should have ended.
Yes, I think an ending here would have been just fine, and I'll explain it. I think they do a really good job kind of showing her sinking into madness. The way she's got the pictures laid out, she's kind of scatterbrained, stares at the window. The way she looks at the knife even, I think is really effective. This scene is one of the most terrifying in the film to me. I was convinced that this therapist really made a house call. It was so fucking well done to me. And to me, this is when the phone trope was very well executed. And I normally don't like the double fake out, but because of what we know about her mental state here, I think it works. Her interaction with not real Carl, and then her interaction with her boss, and he rips his face off. Like, I thought it was really effective. Again, normally I'm just not a fan of those, like, gotcha, ooh, gotcha again. Like, that doesn't really work for me normally, but it did here. And we finally cut back to the beginning of the film and see the unfolding of her childhood trauma, which I thought was a nice way to kind of put a bow on that. To this point, it's been hinted at, but we tied together back to the original opening scene. I love the faint sound of the door opening in the background when she's sitting in this room. It's not super loud, super obvious, super creaky. It just opens. I love the way they played with sound in that scene. I thought it really kind of made it even more, and it made it even more tense, for lack of a better term, which I'm going to say 30 times on this episode. I got to find a new phrase. This is supposed to be what's her confronting her own head, like her own mental state. And I think the scene talking to her mom is powerful. At 10 years old, I would have had a hard time choosing anything different. Like you said, though, Brian, right around like 5 more minutes after that, when she walks away and burns the house down, I would have probably ended the film. Me personally. I talk about it in the last set of scenes, but I think it's worth getting into here because they bleed together. Probably would have just said, burnt the house down, you confronted your fears, the entity has moved on. I know that's a happy ending that people don't really love, but I actually think it would have made for a better, tighter film, in my opinion.
Tension continues to be great here, and you can tell the desperation and panic that's overtaking Rose. And it's extremely tense when her therapist shows up at her house and then calls her while she's sitting across from her. When she shows up at the hospital and carves up Carl, it's intense for a second, but I knew it clearly wasn't real because Dr. Desai would never let her get that many stabs in without even saying a word. So it just never hit for me. The least shocking part of the movie was when we saw that she was still in the car. We get more flashbacks to Rose's childhood, and honestly, that whole storyline was unnecessary. Like, you could have just cut the several minutes we got of it and saved us some on the overall runtime. And we really, all we really needed to know is that Rose had a fucked up childhood and that her mama died. Like, that's it. I'm honestly ready to wrap it up here. They spent way too much time at her childhood home.
All right, here's the ending. Huge Mama exits the room and Rose is in what the fuck mode. Rose runs back into the living room and Mama appears behind her, tossing her into the wall. Mama chokes her as the kerosene lamp spills, lighting the place on fire. She pulls her mom's hand off of her, snapping the bone, and lights her on fire with the lamp. Mama shrieks, wallowing around the place, and Rose goes outside. We see Rose driving away, and she's at Joel's apartment. She apologized for dragging him into the mess and being afraid of letting people too close, and kept people at a distance by putting up walls. She asks if she can just stay here and sleep. I'll stay with you forever, he says, and smiles at her, laughing. Rose backs away, and Joel chases her out the apartment until Rose realizes she ran out the old house that isn't on fire. Joel arrives, and she runs back inside. She sees Big Mama again and screams. Mama rips her face off, and we see several mouths as Rose falls to her knees. Mama now enters Rose's stretched-out mouth as Joel breaks into the house. He calls out for Rose, but no answer. Joel finds her dousing herself in the kerosene. She turns around smiling and lights herself on fire. The film ends with Joel being the witness to her suicide. All right, Brian, that's the ending. What'd you think?
I mean, I'm not the only one that I've seen say this. Hell, Mike just did. But doing research, I definitely saw a lot out there too. But after burning her mom and burning the cabin and all the symbolization that kind of goes along with that, physically destroying the trauma of her past and driving away, showing up to Joel's and really having that conversation with him about those walls that should have been the end. Like, even if you ended it on a bad note with his laughing and his smiling, but another whole 10 minutes, man, where we're back at the cabin with Big Mama, I didn't need all that shit. Like, I realize you could say, yeah, sometimes just can't, some people can't overcome their trauma, and that's what we were, maybe symbolizing there. But like I said, okay, you can still have the ending with Joel smiling in his apartment, and you can piece it together in your head. It's too long. It's too much. So even if you just cut it off there, then cut out visiting Gabrielle's mom earlier, that's 20 minutes right there. Now we have an hour and 40 minutes that feels a lot better. Just my 2 cents. So while I like this set of scenes, half of it, I don't care for the ending.
Yep. I mean, like I said, that's kind of where I am. I just wish she burned it all down, got to talk, and that was it. But I will say the sounds her mom makes here are horrifying. And again, I like the representation of her confronting, these childhood traumas and fears and grief and everything. And I just would have been totally fine if it was the end. But the realization that, oh shit, I'm not where I thought I was. I'm right back in my childhood home, kind of snapping out of it, I thought was interesting. Just don't know if it needed to last as long as it did. The mouth stretching scene is fucking insane, though. That is crazy. And then poor Kyle Gallner. My man had to deal with this shit and a shittier, less effective version of Freddy Krueger. Tough go for my man Kyle, man. Anyway.
I forgot he was in that shit. I forgot he was in it.
He had to deal with Huge Mama and shitty Freddy. No, man, that's a tough go for sure. I think there's a great closing shot on the smile, and in the fire in his eyes, and the lollipop song is a nice touch. I just agree with you, Brian. I would have ended it at that conversation with those two. You don't have to end on a happy note, but I definitely wouldn't have wasted another 11 minutes going back to this house. Just me personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Rose's mama morphed into the baby Mama from Barbarian and the main villain of Ghost of Mars, but here we are.
Definitely did.
Nice.
I thought the CG on her mama's burning body looked pretty bad. Didn't think it looked good at all. Pretty telling that the first place she goes is to Joel's, and she wants him to stay with her while she sleeps. Take note, men. Be weary of exes. But that whole scene at Joel's not being real and then us being right back in the house with Big Mama is so frustrating. I mean, talk about a waste of time. And then she full-on Saint Mauded herself. Okay. Like, it's just such a disappointment for the way this one wrapped up.
Saint Maud. That's some cinema right there, brother. All right, let's jump into our social media comments and questions. I'll do Instagram first. First one we got is Jordan Zeger. I wanted to like this one, but it just didn't do it for me. The most interesting part was probably the ending when you actually saw whatever that thing was, LOL. And let's not forget the poor cat getting murdered, SMH. It's a no for me, dog. Maybe the next one will be better, though, with the shrug emoji. I'm hopeful. And the last comment we got is from Macon X2. Smile is an above average horror movie with a couple of good scares. On a positive note, Kyle Gallner is giving me life just like he did with Megan Fox. Watch out, fellas. This succubus is back in heat. All right,
shit.
Kyle Gallner got you all hot and bothered over
God
there.
damn, brother. You should have told him to call you sometime. Oh, sorry.
There's only one succubus.
Oh, we retired that.
She
Sorry.
she called herself a succubus too. Like Dustin's having this effect on our fans to where he's not even driving them away. They're calling themselves succubuses. This is crazy.
Right.
Hey, Dustin, who is the only real succubus?
Oh, that'd be Maggie Hart.
I don't know. The woman that Chef from South Park was dating that one time, she seemed pretty succubus.
That's
Anyway.
true. That is true. I mean, all she wanted was 350.
350.
All right, I've got X, the artist formerly known as Twitter, pulled up. Andrew Ferguson said, for the most part, I enjoyed it. When the sister swung her head down at the car, I legitimately took a swing at my TV. I saw it coming, and it still got me. And then that guy, Millhouse, replied and said, that was a great jump scare, but sadly the trailer ruined it for me. Kevin Scanlon said, this movie had real potential and ended up falling flat for me. I'm in no hurry to see the sequel because of it. And then Nico said, I 100% agree, and mentioned the Ouija movies about how his hopes for the sequels. And then Dana replied and said, what Kevin said, fell flat. And then Sean Irwin said, this movie could have not dropped the ball harder if it tried. It was boring, too long, and an idiotic ending. 3 out of 10.
Jesus.
That guy Millhouse at Millhouse 14108 said, first thing that comes to mind is the marketing they did for the movie. Having people at sporting events smiling creepily, wearing bright shirts that say smile, perfect. As far as the film, good practical effects at least. This was It Follows 2022 version. 5 out of 10. Love the show. Appreciate that. And then the last one we got is from Mookie. Said, not bad, but honestly thought the short was better and more effective.
Fair.
Okay. Yeah, I actually want to watch this short now that I've seen this. We only have one comment on the Book of Faces. Amber George, she says, I liked it. We'll see sequel as well.
Nice.
All right. Okay.
I think we will too. Support cinema, brother.
Absolutely.
Fuck cinema. I'm just kidding.
I always support cinema here on the show. What
Yeah,
I don't know
you
what
do.
you're talking
Go
about.
ahead.
Yeah, you do. Y'all got any fun facts? Brian, Dustin?
Yeah, I've got a few.
All right, go
I
ahead,
got
brother.
one. It's that Kyle Garner was in Scream 5 with David Arquette. But
Oh,
There you go, buddy.
there you go.
That is a very fun fact.
It is.
When asked what if multiple people witness Rose's death at the end, could more than one witness carry the smile curse on? Writer and director Parker Finn revealed that's a really fantastic question, and it's definitely one that they're talking about, discussing. He thinks that the evil in the film is incredibly specific, and he thinks that as we start to peel back the layers and learn more of what its intentions are and how it works, that he likes to think that even by the end of the film, it might still have more surprises in store for us. Okay. Almagated Dynamics did the CG effects for this one, who also did the effects for Alien 3. The real ending of the Alien franchise, and nothing was ever made after that, in my opinion. When Mustache is being pulled out of that present, it's a fully digital cat, which honestly you can tell now that you know that and you go back and look at it. Rose's cabin, where her mother committed suicide, is number 409. Those numbers add up to 13, foreshadowing unlucky events. And lastly, towards the end of the movie, when Rose visits her childhood home and confronts the spirit of her mother, the broken curtain rail and light coming through the window in the bedroom looks like a smile that Gabrielle drew representing the entity. There's a lot of those instances of like, oh, this looks like a smile. This doesn't. When you're looking for something, some stuff you kind of make up. So that's the only one that I really wanted to pull out there.
Okay. This movie was made for a whopping $17.5 million, grossing $217 million. Did gangbusters at the box office. The marketing fucking worked, brothers, which is why we are getting a Smile 2.
Okay.
Yep. And unfortunately, I will be seated.
Unfortunately.
Same.
I'm complaining about these fucking sequels getting made, but here I am sitting there watching them. But it's for hashtag content reasons. Anywho, let's move on to our favorite kill, least favorite kill, and the rating. I'll kick us off. Favorite kill, I'm going to go with Laura for sure. That opening set of scenes is great. Like, that's my favorite part of the movie. Least favorite kill, the cat. What the fuck, man? I said at the beginning, I love the opening. Like, I should have included that opening on our top 10 favorite opening scenes. At least give it a shout out.
Yeah,
that is
sure.
That is a damn good way to open a movie. I think the camera work is great. Kyle Gallner is fantastic as always. He's been in a lot of horror movies for over a decade now, for Pete's sake. He's like, shout out to him. I like Kyle Gallner. He seems really cool. Sosie Bacon, I think, gives a good performance as well. She portrays the trauma fantastically.
Yeah.
But like Mike and other commenters have mentioned, a lot of the good scares were spoiled in the trailer. I hate that shit. The movie just did not live up to the hype and expectations from the marketing. It was a big whiff. If you watch the deadbeat kill count of this movie, a lot of work actually went into the production of like the Big Mama, the performing that stunt and making all the effects look good. But I just think the Big Mama looks ridiculous, pulling her face off and going into the mouth. I just think it looks dumb. I give the movie a 4 out of 10. I think it's a big whiff.
Okay.
Damn.
Let me go ahead and knock mine out. My favorite kill was Laura. It was so unnerving and well done in the open. Least favorite kill was Rose. Fuck out of my face with the whole third act. Final thoughts. Look, it's a really disappointing third act after such a strong start and interesting premise. The runtime is entirely too long. I'm in no hurry to ever watch it again. Thank God we reviewed it tonight so that it's out of the way. I gave it a 5.5.
God damn. All right.
He's already dead.
My favorite kill was the girl cutting herself at the very beginning. I'm too lazy to go back and look up any more details about that name.
Laura.
Laura. My favorite kill is Laura cutting herself at the very beginning. My least favorite kill, I put Gabrielle off screen, but Nico talked me into it being the cat. So fuck you guys. And I didn't hate this, and I'm not going to go too much more into it. It was just too damn long of a movie, though. I actually gave this one a 6.5.
Yep, my favorite kill was also Laura. My least favorite was also the cat. Unnecessary, man. I don't want to kill an animal for no fucking reason. I said everything I have to say. It just hit better for me this time around. I enjoyed it a lot more. I thought it just resonated with me more this time. I thought the way they use everything as like a representation of trauma and grief and this invisible monster idea, I thought worked really well. I think the acting is part of the reason I liked it so much this time around. Shout out to the cast. I think everybody did great. Great camera work, great music, great sound, all that. Can't believe I'm going to end up giving this the highest score because I did not really like this film the first time I saw it. I gave this movie an 8. I liked it. What can I say?
Yeah, I respect it, man.
So that gives us a composite score of a flat 6. And IMDb has it at a 6.5.
Okay.
Rotten Tomatoes, what the fuck? They got it in the 80?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
80%?
Damn.
Rotten Tomatoes is dog shit. I just wanted to throw that out there. But if you'd like to
Rotten
sponsor our
Tomatoes is dog
show,
shit. Don't. Even though they agree with me on this one, they're dog shit. Fuck them.
We can be bought.
Oh, I can be bought, brother.
Any final
I'll do
thoughts?
commercial. I'll do an ad for Coke and Pepsi. I don't give a fuck what comes out of my mouth.
Hey, shout out to Dave Chappelle. Yeah. I did commercial for Coke and Pepsi. All right.
Can't even taste the difference. Surprise.
All right, blood donors. Let's shout them out. Then I'll announce my pick for next week. Legendary blood donor Dana Tucker, 3 times. We still have 2 reviews. We really appreciate you, Dana. Camper Level Reoccurring Nina, the Horror Movie Crew podcast. Alex Seligson, Steve Schmidt, and Michelle Mirza. Camp Counselor Reoccurring Edwin Hernandez Gunn, Joe Swinford, Adrian Aiello, Brian Samick, Andrew Ferguson, Brooke Maley, Thorne David Phillips, Heather Superdoc, Jennifer Davis from the Too Close to Home Pod, Dana Tucker, Cole McAlexander, and Max K. Can't stress it enough. We really appreciate y'all. It does take a big burden off of us. I'm going to announce my pick for next week for September month. Darren Aronofsky, Mother, with an exclamation point. I am very curious to see how Brian feels about this movie. It is very symbolic, very well acted, very A24-esque, but I think you might like it.
You lost me on that last one.
I think you might like it. I'm hopeful you like it, by God. But go check out our interview with Julie Benz. That was fantastic. She's amazing. If y'all missed it, we hope y'all have been enjoying all the content. Just to give y'all a point of reference, I don't want to drag this show any longer because we're all tired. But it's 10:37 p.m. on a Wednesday night. We've been recording since 7:45. We put in a lot of work. We hope y'all appreciate it. Thank thank y'all for listening.
Just want to remind everybody